right. Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick King, and you are tuning in for another episode of Sustainable Nashville Live. This is the series that kind of opens that door to those great change makers working in and around sustainability in Nashville and the public. And today I'm here with Chris Koczaja, right?
Perfect.
Excellent. CEO at Lightwave Solar. A few reminders before we get started. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so now. Just go to YouTube, search Urban Green Lab, click the bell to subscribe. You'd be doing us a really big favor. And Urban Green Lab is a nonprofit, so if you feel so inclined to support the work that we do, you can head to our website, urbangreenlab.org, to make a donation, or on your cellular device, you can text Team UGL, all one word, to 44321, and you'll get a link sent to your phone. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get to it. First and foremost, Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing great, and appreciate the opportunity to be here, not only today, but everything that Urban Green Lab does in the community. It's great. Always been big supporters of you guys.
Thank you. I'd be lying if we didn't say we didn't like Lightwave Solar either.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. I guess to get started, could you just tell us a little bit about Lightwave and some of the work that you all do?
Sure. So Lightwave's been in the solar industry before the solar industry was cool, especially here in Tennessee. So we've been doing solar since 2006, and our founder, Steve Johnson, really pioneered a lot of solar in the Tennessee Valley. It was very nascent, not only in the US, but definitely in the Valley at that point in time. So he kind of had the forethought of bringing it here and making, the company around it, built on, the belief that if we do high quality, we do it passionately, and we take care of the customers, that ultimately the customers take care of us. So around 2017 then, Steve decided to transition into well-deserved retirement. And at that point, I came in and I've been running it since. But in our history, we've got almost 1,000 projects that we've done across not only Tennessee Valley, but even up in Illinois, Arkansas, kind of the 7-state region that TVA covers. But we also like to, kind of pat ourselves on the back a little bit, that we try to take care of not just the bigger projects, but everything down to, the small residential projects, or some of the harder to do, smaller, like RV bus systems, similar to the system you guys have in the lab itself, helping make those work. So we try to cover a wide spectrum, again, with the belief that everyone can go solar. This is something that not just one segment of the economy or another segment can benefit from. It's something that everyone can benefit from, and everyone uses energy every day. So the more that we can promote on one side, the more it helps kind of across the spectrum. So that's what we've kind of been built on, and has, like I said, if we keep the customers first, they've always been good about taking care of us. So
that's great to hear. How, if COVID has impacted y'all's business, how has it impacted business for you?
It's interesting because we're fortunate that most of our work obviously is outside. So from an environmental work environment perspective, it's been one of the better places to be. Now, from our office perspective, we've kept that largely closed, except for kind of the essential operations there. So I'm working remotely today, as are a number of our office people. But we have had to get on our A game about, it is construction industry. There are a lot of different people on job sites. So making sure that if we do have an instance, that we've got it traced, we properly quarantine, and largely it's enabled us to keep going. It just has slowed everything down, like I think most people would tell you. But considering other industries and other places, we've been, again, really fortunate that we're able to keep working. And even, I think the broader scope of how has COVID affected kind of the industry is it seems to actually be accelerating the transition to clean energy. We see more people kind of saying, well, here's kind of where the end game was anyway. Let's skip the next 2 steps and let's just take that next step. So we've seen a lot more interest in not only solar, but the solar plus storage. So, we're even branding a lot of things as solar and storage, because the two technologies obviously are going to go hand in hand as we move into the next decade.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of because I know like home improvement projects have been like just on the rise. So that's kind of why I asked. I was just curious if you were kind of like catching that tail end of home improvements with people spending more and more time at home and kind of paying more attention to their energy costs and their energy, consumption. Yeah.
No, that's actually a great point and kind of dovetails exactly into what we talk about a lot. So just a little background on myself. I spent a lot of time. I started with Caterpillar Incorporated, so I started in big power generation with big natural gas diesel engines. Did some biodiesel, actually one of the first biodiesel engines here in the Valley. Worked on that project, and then kind of transitioned into a role in a waste to energy company, looking at how we think about waste and are there ways to convert that to energy. And what I always told people there is that I worked in what people would consider away. So when you throw trash away, that's the landfill. So I worked in the landfills. When you flush the toilet, you flush it away, and worked in the wastewater treatment plants. And I think that's the important thing that was the big disconnect on the waste to energy side, is that until society and people really understand where away is, it doesn't affect what you do every day as much. It's just kind of, well, it goes away. I don't have to worry about it. But when it's right up in your face, it's kind of, wow, you got to do something different. We just can't keep doing this. Well, same on the energy side. And that's what's been interesting, especially as we add the solar and storage, is that not only do you get a monthly bill that said, wow, we use this much every month, or even, 5 years ago, you had your solar, and at the end of the month, you said, okay, I generated this much on my solar, I used this much, and this is what my net bill is. Well, now we've got customers who are real time seeing that I'm creating this much energy with solar, and I'm using this much in the house, and it's exceeding or whatever. I'm going to turn this off or that, or my batteries are full, my house isn't using it, my solar's still pumping out. I'm going to plug in my EV and start charging it, because that power was just going to be given away for free. So it really has taken that away concept for electricity, and it's not just electricity that's generated off in some faraway power plant. It's now in my control, and I think that's what, irrespective of politics, I think what a lot of people are seeing is that you call it sustainability, you call it carbon neutrality, you call it independence, you call it freedom. It's all kind of the same thing. People are trying to achieve that same space moving forward. So it really has enabled with just the same technology, a more ubiquitous conversation about how we generate and use energy. So it's been a neat space, and I think in the next 3 to 4 years, you're going to see a lot of transition in how we think about both. So
yeah.
Very long answer to a short question, but sorry.
No. Very poetic answer to a short question. I'm really happy you kind of touched off on that, because in the questions I have for you, we're kind of going to get down to a little bit of the grittiness of that, but I really do appreciate that answer. And I was actually talking with someone earlier this week about the concept of away. There is no away, it's just somewhere else. And typically it's not somewhere you would see it, but that doesn't mean it's not being seen by someone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you touched off on this a little bit just in your response, but could you tell us a little bit more about how you got interested in this line of work? Were you just kind of like born in the renewable space? Or...
No, I'm a gearhead. I did my first presentation on the internal combustion engine when I was in the 6th grade.
Okay.
So I've always been just fascinated with mechanics. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. So, when I graduated high school, of course, I'm going to be an engineer. And, when I'm graduating college, the first thing I'm going to go do is work with big engines. So that was Caterpillar, and working with power generation there, and was based down here in Nashville. And again, worked on a lot of different projects, but it was kind of my love of the engine that got me into the energy industry, because that was the natural output for the big engines. So that's when I started learning a lot more about energy and how it's transformed from one form to another and put on the grid, and what we do with distributed generation versus centralized generation there, and some of the benefits. And then we moved to engines that did landfill gas. So again, it started the away part of my career, going to landfills and saying, hey, we've got all this methane coming off the landfills. we got to do something with it. Just flaring it off just seems like such a huge waste. We've already created this array in a hole in the ground. The least we can do is use the methane to make some energy. So did a number of those projects, and then got into that biodiesel project. And then that's when the waste to energy side came in, and that included biomass and everything else, and really understanding the value of a BTU and how that translates. So that's kind of the natural progression for me up to and including, we used to live in Illinois, and when we were there, we used wood heat for our house. So you got a really, really good, tangible feel for what the value of a log was to the temperature in the house, and how many logs it took to actually keep the house warm. And, I go back to that analogy a lot of really helping people understand what the value, what a kilowatt hour is, how much it takes to generate that. And, that's that natural progression. But when you build a waste to energy plant, you have to convert, a number of different types of materials into energy. You have to deal with emissions. You have to deal with the actual mechanics and the equipment to transform that energy. And while I was building one of those plants, a solar array was going up, and I'm sitting here building, we're working, and it's not just me, it's a whole team building, but looking, and then kind of look over, and it's like, wow, those solar panels are just so easy.
Yeah.
You just sit there, there's no moving parts, they just sit there and generate it. That is a way easier way to make it than what I've been trying to do this whole time. So, as I think everyone has in their life, there are those moments where, you just have opportunity, and, it's luck is where preparation and opportunity meet. And I think that's what just happened with me, is that the opportunity with Lightwave came at a time when I was having an epiphany. And it's like, well, I wasn't planning on being a business owner, but it kind of makes sense. It kind of was a natural progression for my career. And it was something that I thought, with the Lightwave team, which if you've met anyone on the team, is just amazing. They make it easy. Love everyone on it. And, it's just, they really go above and beyond. And, it's like after meeting the team, after doing this, it's like, yep, this is the way we have to go. And it's been good. So it's not been easy the last 3 years since I've held the helm, but it's been fun. And, we've made great strides as a team. And I think, the next 3 to 5 years is going to be an exciting ride.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really interesting that you kind of just had that aha moment, like, wait a second,
it's so much easier.
Yeah, they're generating energy, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So, it's great to be on. It's not even leading edge. It's really, we're past the early majority, and we're into the early majority phase of solar, to where it's really, really just starting to catch on. So, it's been fun.
Yeah, and that really lends well to my next question. And it's, in your own words, why do you think renewable energy is important? And specifically, why solar energy is important?
Well, I think, it goes back to what I just hit on with solar is just easy. And, my whole history before solar, creation of energy was always associated with an environmental emissions permit. So everything that I had in my history had a tailpipe to it. Yeah. And, that's okay. It's emissions aren't necessarily bad, but at the same time, you're always going to have a byproduct there that you have to deal with. So, when you look at solar, it's kind of like, wow, we can build these huge generation facilities and we don't have to have an emissions permit. That's a big deal. That's a whole section of the carbon, the nitrous oxides, the HAPs, all of that stuff you don't have to deal with in after treatment or whatever else. Now, people will argue, well, yeah, but you still got solar panels that need to be recycled. And I say, yep, absolutely. But, I also point to the aspect of solar in that, there will be an industry to recycle solar panels, but it's tough to build an industry when you don't have the demand to recycle solar panels yet. So in the next 10, 15 years, I think is when you'll see more of that, that start to come up. So, so that's, one of the reasons why I think solar energy is important. And then I think the piece you hit on earlier too is important, is that it's something that everyone gets. You get the sunlight for free delivered to your house every day. And it's a real easy way to, in your mind, say, I've got this energy that is being transformed to electricity, delivered to my house, and I'm using this much. I'm in control of how much I use. So again, it really makes people think about how I'm using my energy. And it's the first rule of recycling. The first thing you want to do is reduce. Let's not use what we don't have to.
Yep.
And I think that's the portion of energy that yes, we can change out the light bulbs, yes, we can do the thermostats and all that, but you don't see it until the end of the month, versus with what we're doing now, you see it real time and you get a little more direct correlation to your behaviors. So those are, I think, a couple of the big transitions I see kind of enabling movement, and why solar and, again, storage, I think is kind of the next phase and where we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess what's one thing most folks would be surprised to learn about solar energy?
I think, it's probably going to be more on the storage side of it.
Okay.
And I think that's probably the biggest disconnect we get a lot of times is yes, this is, if I put solar panels up, I'm making electricity, but I can't necessarily directly use that electricity like I would, say, from a generator. That my house or my solar panels can't just power my house without a connection to the grid or something else. And I think that's where the storage piece comes in and enables that thought to come together. Is this, well, now that I have storage, it can. So you do have that independence now to put the two together, where you can actually power your home from both, and in the event of an outage, a storm, whatever, you have that ability. So I think that's one misconception. And two, it's the adage of yes, some of these systems are expensive, but at the same time, so is using a lot of electricity. So what we look at is people have been spending so much a month on electricity, and you multiply that out by 20 years, and that's a lot of money. And that's kind of what helps offset the equation there too, is the concept of you're basically pre-buying your energy. You're pre-buying some of that, and it's green energy, and you're in control more of your energy usage. So I would say those two concepts are some of the two that we convey most to potential clients, customers.
Okay. And kind of let's dig into that conversation about storage. Could you maybe just give us a quick breakdown of how a residential solar system would operate?
Sure, absolutely. So, and taking just a quick step back, and the reason why it's important is there's solar storage and electric vehicles, and you have to kind of lump them into one thing, because I think largely we on the team believe that electric vehicles and electrification of more is coming. And so when you look at the electric vehicle side, now, again, maybe one of the, to your previous questions, one of the biggest misconceptions is your electric vehicle will create, or will probably be, the largest load on your house when you start charging. So if you were paying $100 a month in electricity, you could be spending $200 once you start plugging your electric vehicle in. And that's okay. Yes, it went up, but it's deferring what you would be paying for gasoline. Well, now that I'm putting those concepts together, the electric vehicles and the electrification has also brought new battery technology. And that's really the exciting thing with residential storage, is it's starting to benefit greatly from all the advancements in the electric vehicle space. So now I can take some relatively small, when you consider how much energy they're storing, batteries, put them into a house. And so now I've got the battery storage, I've got the solar, and I've got my loads in the house. So during the day, the solar is creating solar electricity, and it's either being used first in the home, or if the home doesn't need it, it's charging the batteries, and it'll go throughout the day. And so when the sun goes down, the home is still demanding energy. Everyone's coming home from work, school, and normal non-COVID times, turning on, air conditioning, TV, stove, all that stuff. Well, normally that's outside of the solar window. And I think that's the big piece piece, and I'll hit on that in a second, that is opportunity in the future as well. But in the example, that's when you're no longer generating it off the roof. Now the energy is coming out of the batteries that you generated earlier in the day. And so now the batteries are carrying the home through the evening, and just depending on how much energy storage you have and how judicious you've been with your usage, the batteries can carry it into the night or maybe even through the night until the next morning when the sun comes back up and you start the process over again. So, and that just repeats. Now, obviously, will you get those gray winter weeks where the sun doesn't come out for like a week and you don't generate near as much power as you use? Absolutely. And that's why, the utility connection and, the cheap, relatively clean power from the TVA is important there, as part of that piece. But again, part of this whole story is, even just this year, we've run out of names for hurricanes because there's been so many and so much is changing. We've had blackouts and outages here in Middle Tennessee this year, more than one, I think 2 or 3 this year. And it's just, it's a function of more energy in the atmosphere, more storms, and outages it's just tough. At the same time, we have, aging infrastructure. So that's a lot of what we see is kind of the ability now for a customer or client to say, well, not only do I have my solar energy, I get to manage my consumption, but then in case of an outage, I've got the tools to maintain and run through that outage by knowing how I'm using electricity and how I'm storing it. So that's what we see kind of coming together. And what we're working with on the utility side is trying to help them understand that what was termed formerly is the duck curve, where the solar energy cuts out right when demand in the homes increase in the evenings. Well, now energy storage is helping defer that. So, there's a lot of opportunities working jointly with the local power companies and the utilities on trying to structure programs and rates to help mitigate some of the problems on the grid with the back and forth between generation and demand, especially as you start putting electric vehicles on. So that's the big piece I see in the next 3 to 5 years of everyone coming together again for a better overall outcome.
Yeah. I guess this is like really interesting because all of your answers are really leading into my next questions. So that's great. So the next one here is the price of solar energy has come down dramatically in the past couple of decades, but home installation is still out of reach for a lot of folks. What do you think it will take for solar adoption to become the norm?
I think, part of it is going to be seeing it built in more on the front end. So when we build homes, we build them at the very least with build them solar ready, storage ready, and EV ready. And it doesn't take much money up front to do that. After the fact, it can be very expensive to try to do that. So that would be the first thing. And then 2, starting to see the value or recognize the value of those technologies in the home. So if I've got a brand new kitchen with a Viking range and, all this high-end stuff, that adds value to a house. Well, solar and storage are just getting to that point where people are recognizing that, well, I know that's not zero, but I don't know what that value is of that. And there's more studies that are coming out by the realty industry to start to say that, well, a house with and a house without has a delta there. And I think if you can factor in that piece of it, and you factor in what we can do up front, and then you look at the different mechanisms that it'll save money and work for the client over the term, those things all start to come together to make a more favorable economic picture that's there. In this region, we don't have the same programs they do in others that are largely termed net metering and things like that, but which make it easier to make those paybacks and make it more affordable. But at the same time, I think we're a little bit closer to getting to that other side of it, of valuing the storage and the solar storage, EV story, and how that benefits everyone, and how maybe someone that does that, can help monetize that for themselves.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. Like, we can advocate for more solar, but unless we have infrastructure in place to kind of promote that usage, it's like which comes first.
Yeah, and it's something that it is definitely transitioning. The organic growth curve is absolutely there. And the reasons to do it are getting broader. So, so yeah, even more than the chicken and the egg, I think we're hatching. We're just, kind of at that stage where it's going to take a little while to get the technology and the programs, incentives all lined up.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, I'm here for it. So,
like I said, it's the number of changes I see coming. And I tell people all the time, it's not 5 years. I think it's more like 3 years in both the products, the technology, and everything going on is really exciting and good for the consumer and good for, I think, again, the whole picture.
Yeah. So I got 2 questions left for you. But this one is, so what can we as citizens of Middle Tennessee and the Southeast do to help promote a just and equitable transition to clean and renewable energy?
The first thing is just get educated on what's there. We've got a number of different programs that are available, a number of technologies that are available, and I think it's pretty easy to get up to speed these days on what the reality of our current utility environment is and opportunities that are there and how things can work. So get educated first, and then understand your usage and how you use energy, and what would make a difference for you, and then engage with your local power company or find a local solar company that can help you understand what that looks like for you. But education and engagement, especially not necessarily with me or the local industry, but your local power company and just the different local groups that are available is important. I will say that there's been a big shift in generation, even from the TVA and where they're going. They've got a number of programs and large installations going in on the utility scale, on the very large scale. And then they've also for the first time offered some flexibility to the local power companies to do different things and procure energy in a different way. So the landscape is changing greatly. So I would say that, get educated first on kind of what's there, what the opportunities are, and then engage, especially on the local power company and the local level, to understand what Nashville is doing, or what NES is doing, or any of the other LPCs, municipalities that are there. So you can be part of that, and as opportunities come up, step in and make your voice heard.
Yeah, for sure. That was a really great response. And I have one more question for you, and this is kind of like the big one. So what is your sustainable vision for the city of Nashville? Imagine if you had a magic wand that you can just wave.
So it's tougher in the urban environments. And, we look at, what are the opportunities for rooftops, for land, for carports, for EV charging, for the gambit. So, if waving the wand, I think it's look at some of the low-hanging fruit first. And they've been good about trying to, achieve, high levels of LEED on all the new buildings. We've helped them participated on a number of the fire stations, Bellevue Ice, buildings that are incorporating, the LEED Gold, LEED Platinum, which inevitably adds the solar component to it first. And I'd say that's the first thing, is look at the lower hanging fruit of what we can put solar on efficiently now. And they're doing that on new buildings, but then it's kind of going back and looking at the existing rooftops areas and what we can do on that. And then once you make that transition, then it's starting to look at the demand side, what we can do on demand, which they have looked at and done a good job at, but also look at the storage side and see what's available there to help offset demand, use what solar is there more efficiently, hand in hand with are there larger offsite arrays then that we can also build. So, to augment that picture. So, and Nashville just signed the Green Invest deal as well. That was just announced this week, which goes a long way towards moving Nashville not only to its long-term targets, but definitely hitting some of the short-term targets. And I think that's great. That's part of it, because again, as a urban environment, you can only build so much solar because you only have so much land available.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think I go to a little bit of the earlier analogy of that is solar that's away, and I would put some solar, right where the usage is as well. So it's distributed, it's there, and it brings the whole picture in and adds savings to kind of the existing generation as well. So, that's just a few things of what's there, and some of it is being worked on. I know some of it's more difficult, but that's kind of the roadmap that I see ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought about how in urban environments, I guess, where there is maybe, I guess, the most energy need, there's also the least amount of land to kind of have like those large industrial solar arrays set up. And it's mostly just, like rooftops are the available space by and large. So yeah, that's interesting.
So, but there's still, there's a large opportunity for, when you put it all together, it's more piecemeal. So it's a more difficult picture. So
yeah. Well, so that was my last question for you. If viewers have any additional questions or just want to get involved, how can they reach out?
Well, a couple things. They can info@lightwavesolar.com if they want to reach us, but there's also the Tennessee Solar Energies Industry Association, Tennessee Solar, that they can reach out to. And we as the industry, are working kind of across all the aspects from utility to small residential solar to try to push solar and again, provide information. So.
Excellent. Okay, I will be providing those links for everyone. Chris, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being with me.
No, thank you for the opportunity again, and thank you for all your guys' great work.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you for the great work that you all do as well.
Thank you. Everyone, have a great day, and thanks for joining in.
Excellent. Everyone, next week we'll be speaking to Jim Hawk. He is the Executive Director of Neighbor to Neighbor. If you have a question for Jim or recommendation on an organization you would be interested in learning more about, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is patrick@urbangreenlab.org. Until next time, just remember to live sustainably.